Greetings and welcome, people. I wanted to make this vlog a few weeks ago so I could do it as a on-bike video, but of course in my usual inimicable style I didn't get round to it, and now of course with all the restrictions and many motovloggers voluntarily avoiding riding at the moment, and I'm one of them, so I've decided to dig up some old video footage that I shot some years before I started motovlogging properly, when I was running a camera on the bike purely as a dash cam, and I'll do a voiceover on top of that, and then a bit later on we'll cut to some current video of the bike to illustrate the point I'm trying to make, or the point I hope I'm going to try and make. Again, as I often do, I'm making this video in response to another motovlogger's video, and I'll get to that in a minute. But one of the aspects of riding a motorcycle that I think we're all aware of is the greater level of exposure we have. We're more at risk of injury in the event of an accident. Clearly that is just part and parcel of riding a motorcycle. You're not protected by anything from 1 to 2 tons of metal with airbags and seat belts, etc. That's a given. Obviously that doesn't mean we go out and try and get involved in any accidents to get injured, but we do everything we can to mitigate against that, or we should do, I think. Now it brings me on to something that happened quite a long while ago, probably more than 20 years ago now, 20, 30 years ago, in cars and vans and other four-wheeled or 4 or more wheeled vehicles. For a long time, up until about that time, almost every vehicle simply had 2 sets of lights on the back, one on each side, and these 2 sets of lights comprised the indicators or turn signals, and up until a long time ago they didn't even include reverse lights or fog lights. But the other thing they included was the tail light, rear light, and the brake light or stop light. And of course the rear light and the brake light were part and parcel of the same lamp, as it were. It was just a dual filament bulb, as is the case now, and so basically that was it. You had the 2 sets of lights, and that was how vehicles were. Now I'm not entirely sure exactly when it was. I think it was about 30 years ago. We started to see more and more of auxiliary high level or third brake lights on, certainly on cars. Probably came out of the factory as standard on the slightly more expensive cars, but were available as an option or an aftermarket fit on the more mid-range and low-range cars. And of course what this did was it gave the back of the vehicle an additional brake light that wasn't part of another light, as it were. So it was another light that came on only when you braked, and this was obviously a safety feature. And this probably brings me to the point I'm trying to make, and we'll probably cut in a few minutes to actual current footage of my bike to illustrate what I mean. And one thing I have noticed, and I'm pretty good at that because I'm a fairly observant sort of guy. Ooh, trying to sound cool there. Fairly observant sort of chap, shall I say. Is that pretty much every motorcycle has a single rear light, single tail light. If we discount the indicators or turn signals for the time being, pretty much the vast majority of motorcycles have a single tail light, and that includes the rear light and the brake light in one lamp unit. Again, dual filament bulbs or whatever. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move to set up at the back of my bike and illustrate the point I'm trying to make. So get back to you in a minute. So here we are, set up now with the camera looking at the back end of my bike, and that black and yellow thing sticking up behind the other side of the grab rail is the battery charger. Just decided to stick that on quickly for give it a top-up charge. And obviously, as you can see, we've just got the one rear light, and this unit has two bulbs in, but each bulb is a dual stop and rear light, or brake and rear light. Ignore the indicators for the time being, they're not involved in this situation. So let me just put the rear light on. So you saw the rear light come on then, and for most bikes, you have to excuse all the noises going on around the place. Of course, everybody's at home now doing lots of DIY and maintenance and spring work. So anyway, yeah, so you've got that one rear light, and if I press the brake lever, you notice that that one light just increases in brightness, and I hope that mic wire isn't getting in the way there. And my thinking on that is, and this is just purely a theory of my own, is that is a change of intensity in an existing light. Obviously, if the light's not on, I'll turn the rear light off, operate the brake. You can see that obviously that's quite a big difference. That's a light that is not on, is on, not on, on. So obviously if somebody is driving or riding behind the bike and the light is not on, I have a front daytime running light, so I don't normally run with my normal lights on, certainly not during the day, then if I brake, they will see a light that wasn't previously on come on, even if they're not focused on the back of my bike at that point. The fact that a light will illuminate that wasn't previously illuminated. Oh my goodness me, gurgling of water around the place. Hopefully, that would draw their attention. They would realise that I've applied the brakes, I'm slowing down, whatever. This obviously doesn't involve at the moment any discussion of engine braking, just simply closing the throttle and allowing drivers to know you're slowing down that way, which you can do by just simply feathering the brake lever lightly just to operate the brake light. So we have just a single light coming on. If it's not on before, that might draw the driver of the following vehicle, might draw their attention, might let them know. But if you're running with your lights on, even if it's just side lights, the back light is the same whether you're running on main headlight or just side lights. As I say, you've got a light that's on, gets a bit brighter, or quite a bit brighter. Now if the driver's not paying attention for whatever reason, they may not be aware that the light intensity has changed. It may take an extra fraction of a second, a critical fraction of a second, for them to process the fact that that light has changed intensity. If they just simply look down at their speedo, check their mirrors, they look away for a fraction of a second. When they look back, the light that was on is a light that is on, and they may not, as I say, process the fact that that light is now brighter. And this is what I think possibly happened in the video I was referring to. It was a video uploaded about a month ago by Phil480, where he'd come to, and I just want to stress that I am not attributing any blame to Phil in what happened at all. He did absolutely nothing wrong. Excuse me. Obviously the entire fault is the fault of the driver behind. I mean, it's taken as a given with most people that if you run into the back of the vehicle in front, then unless they've deliberately set their car up so that their brake lights don't work to trap you into driving into the back of them, then under all other circumstances you're held to be pretty much at fault. So Phil he was riding along, it was at night, so of course he had his lights on, and he came to a pedestrian crossing, a traffic light controlled pedestrian crossing. The light changed red for a pedestrian to cross. Phil came to a stop, and for whatever reason the driver of the car behind him didn't realise that Phil had come to a stop, maybe expected him to just carry on. That seems to be a lot of the case these days. Some people just casually ignore red lights if there's no immediate reason for them to stop. They'll just go, nope, there's no reason to stop, and just carry on. And it may be that this guy either hadn't observed that Phil had come to a stop, hadn't observed his brake light illuminating, or whatever reason just assumed that Phil would carry on, and so left his braking till the absolute last minute and did actually run into the back of Phil. Luckily it was a low speed bump, just jolted the bike forward a bit. I think it did do a little bit of damage to the bike, but it was still rideable. Phil was okay, thankfully, and the driver's insurance settled it all up, so that's all well and good. But my thinking is, and this is something that's been in my mind for some years, it's not simply a product of watching Phil's video, it's just something I've been pondering and basically trying to make myself as safe as possible on the bike, and that is to make it absolutely clear to any road user behind me that I am braking. And to that end I made a small modification to the back end of my bike, which is this, and I hope you can see that. This is an LED light strip, red LEDs, and basically I just fixed it with some sealant, grey sealant, to the bottom of a number plate where the dealership name was, where I bought the bike. The dealership no longer exists, so I'm not covering up any vital information, and it's my bike anyway, so I can do what the heck I like. I've basically just drilled a small hole through the number plate here and run the wire up under the seat, and basically tapped it into the brake light circuit. So now when I press the brake lever, this happens. So instead of just one light changing in brightness, we've actually got a light changing in brightness and an additional light illuminating that wasn't previously illuminated. And now obviously, this is a bit uncool, shall we say, it's a bit unstylish. If I could have come up with another way of doing it, it would have been quite good. Maybe I can get a smaller LED light strip to go up here, but I didn't want to physically alter, drill, or otherwise change any of the panels on the bike. I want to be able to restore everything to as normal at any time, should I so wish. But maybe I can get an adhesive light strip to go along there and just run the wire underneath the panel that way. So, but because I had the space at the bottom of the number plate, I thought that would be a good place to put it, although I think up here ultimately might be better. But clearly one of these won't fit up there, so there we go. That's what I've done to try and make my riding a little bit safer. And also I do things like, if I come up to stopped lines of traffic, I don't stop right behind the vehicle in front of me. I'll stop off to the side, so that if anybody behind me does fail to stop in time, I don't get sandwiched between their vehicle and the one in front of me. I may still get clipped, but at least I won't be crushed. So there we are. That's a little discussion point I thought I'd throw out there. Obviously I don't know whether my particular solution will be suitable for your bike, but of course you can get red LEDs in all sorts of shapes and sizes these days. little small strips smaller than that. You can get little individual eagle eye LED lights that I could basically drill the corners of the number plate and put a couple of extra LEDs in there if I wanted to. Although I think that setup at the moment addresses any need that I may have. So there we are. I think that's everything on that I wanted to cover. The only other aspect of this is if you're, certainly with a bike like mine with its 1200cc engine, the engine braking is fairly good, so quite often I can just wash off a fair amount of speed simply by closing the throttle. Obviously that won't illuminate the back brake lights, either of them. So as I mentioned in one of my previous videos, in my crash helmet I have a Bluetooth comm system which has a light unit that fixes to the back of the helmet, and there's accelerometers built into the comm system that will detect when I'm slowing down and will illuminate the light on the back of the helmet, which I cannot at the moment come up with a way of demonstrating. But when we get back out on the road and get riding again, I'll try and find a way of showing how that works. So basically I have a method of showing drivers and riders behind me that I'm slowing down by either closing the throttle and illuminating the light on the back of my crash helmet, or operating either brake lever and lighting up the brake lights on the back of the bike that way. So I'm not suggesting this is a solution for everyone. Some people may not even want to go anywhere a million miles near an additional brake lights on the back of the bike. But if we're serious about being safe while we're out riding, then it's something I think worth thinking about. So your viewpoint would be interesting to hear, and good to see any comments or whatever from you, and any solution you've come up with on your machine to the same problem. So I hope you're all staying safe, keeping occupied, getting lots of work done on your bike. Everybody's bike should be absolutely pristine by the time this thing's over, and look forward to seeing you all out on the road again. And I'll speak to you on the next video. Cheerio for now. Bye.